Starting? Hi, hi and welcome. My name is Krissa Rossbund. I am the Senior Style and Design Editor for Traditional Home Magazine, and I'm thrilled to be here today on Circa Files. I would like to start by thanking Genevieve Truesdale for having us on her new-ish platform. Circa Files is an invitation-only platform for designers to register, to have access to information they wouldn't otherwise, vendors, and it's an entire platform. We're going to talk more about that in a bit and get more into why you should consider Circa Files. But for right now, I am thrilled to be here today with my dear friend, Timothy Corrigan. Timothy, welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to be with you again and see you. I feel like I see you more through this than I do under normal circumstances because I'm always on the road, but you're really always on the road or in the air rather. So we don't always get to see each other in person as much as we'd like. So this is kind of cool because we've done this a few times now during quarantine. Yeah. So we're here today because Genevieve and Circa Files has started a new series as part of its platform called What I Wish I Knew. So this question is going to be fed out to some of the industry's top designers, and they're going to enlighten us because we kind of think that people like Timothy have figured it all out and cracked all of the design codes. So
don't I wish?
But there are a few things I'm sure he maybe didn't know or wasn't aware of, and we're going to tap into those today, and he will share them. We are going to take questions, so for those of you who have a question to ask, we are happy to answer them at the end, and if you just type them into your Zoom file, I know we're all learning how these platforms work. We will be sure to answer them when we're finished with part of our conversation. So thank you to all of the attendees, and let's get started.
Great.
So Timothy, I think one of the most interesting things about you for people who don't know is you didn't start in the design industry, and that's not completely uncommon in this business, but I think everybody has a different story as to how they arrived here. Some designers did something totally numbers driven and were attorneys or accountants, and I even had a doctor a few weeks ago, somebody in wellness, and you had a venture in the advertising business. So give us the background and tell us sort of how you arrived to your second career as an interior designer.
So Krissa, exactly. I did have a different career first, and I think that many of the designers that I've met have had other careers, and it's important to know that that other career can actually be a huge benefit in terms of your new career as a designer. You actually bring skill sets that are applicable to your new role as a designer. So my background is that I did work in advertising first in Chicago and then in New York. Then I was asked to move to Paris. I was working for a very big advertising agency, and asked to move to Paris to run our European operations. And I did that, and it was really that move to Paris was what really opened my eyes to design and to art and the importance of history, et cetera. My apartment was in Paris, was featured in a magazine just by chance. You know, someone said, "Gee, do you want to have your apartment published?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" Never thinking it would lead to anything else. And soon, friends started asking me if I would help them design their houses, and even some of my advertising clients said, "Hey, would you design my house?" And it really was sort of started as a nighttime job, as it does for a lot of people. They're doing something else in the day and they're doing something else at night. And I loved that process. I then was promoted and was moved back to New York City for my advertising job. And I was then running a company with 197 offices in wow. 89 countries around the world and 6,000 employees. And I've said this before, but at that point, you're running a big company. You're not really very involved in creative things. And pardon me?
You're managing.
You're managing, and you're basically solving a lot of problems, putting out fires. And I really missed the creativity, and I found that I was getting that creativity in my nighttime job as a designer. And that's really when I sort of had this epiphany, and I said, my day job is not going to change. The next roll up was to be the chairman of the company, and he was doing the same things that I was doing, probably more of them. And I thought, well, that's not really what I want for my life. And I realized I really wanted to have a much more creative component in my life, and design was giving me that. So that's why I decided to make that change. And I think that it's that sense of the importance of having a creative life is what became the thing that really forced me to make that change.
Okay. It didn't hurt that you were living in Paris.
Oh, that's true.
It didn't hurt that you were living in Paris because, I mean, it's difficult to not be visually stimulated and inspired. Absolutely. We, sort of overuse the word inspiration in this industry, but it's difficult to not be when you're in Paris. So what attracted you? I mean, as you're strolling the streets, immersed in all of, centuries of beauty and aesthetic, just stimulation and just delicious eye candy everywhere. What was it that attracted you to design? Because a lot of people can go to Paris and say, wow, this is beautiful, but not so much that they want to dive into it as a career. So what attracted you?
What's interesting is, I would say a couple different things. Was first that I met a couple of art and antique dealers who became friends, and they started exposing me to their world. I started going to the auction house. The auction houses in Paris. I started going to the flea market. I just started becoming immersed into that world, going to museums, all those other things that just all of a sudden, became very important to me. And it's partially because that's very much a part of the French culture, is that they're impassioned about the arts and about beauty. So I think that it was being there that helped fuel that. But that then led to me really learning about the history. I studied art history in school, but to start learning about the history of art, the history of design, the history of all these different things. Because let's face it, a lot of people would think they could be designers. A lot of people think that they've got great taste, and they probably do. But there's a big difference between having good taste and you can't just all of a sudden become a designer. It really, you have to do your homework. You have to learn a lot. And so in addition to then studying art history and design history, et cetera, I actually took a course in the business of design, which I think is very important. And I think it's really important to understand that it's more than just how to create a pretty room to be a good designer. You really need to have a much bigger set of knowledge than just saying, oh, gee, that's a pretty room and I can create that.
Right. Well, and we're going to get into sort of credentials and the education part of it in a little bit, but I think, could you elaborate on how people should consider design? Because I think in this country, we're not good at that. We don't have the same sense of appreciation, generally speaking, as the French do, or the Europeans in general, for beauty and architecture. We live in a newish country with architecture that frankly isn't super, super old. And I think kind of we walk around with our heads in the clouds aimlessly sometimes. Could you talk about what you should stop and look at, like those beautiful architectural details that can inspire an entire collection of fabrics, just little moments that people don't think of. They think of art, they think of a museum.
Right. And I think, the interesting thing is that there is beauty everywhere. And I think it's important to just keep your eyes open for that. I'm looking out the window. I'm at my office and I'm looking, and it's actually a fire station across the street. And it's not the most particularly inspiring bit of architecture. And yet I can look at that and I can say, gee, there's some really interesting details there. There are things, there's aspects of that I can actually learn from and try to figure out, well, why was that used? And I think, and how was it used together with this other element? And I think it's important. That's all part of the process as a designer. You have to always be looking at things and always looking at them and sort of say, how do those work together? Interestingly, we've just been designing a bathroom for a house in Florida. And it was the mixture of figuring out how all those different surfaces come together, where the glass meets and where the countertop meets and the wall things. It's that's all an essential part of designer, which is the mechanical, sounds like boring stuff, but you have to figure all those things out as well. Mm-hmm. So it's the nuts and bolts of design that are important to figure out as well, which is well beyond the, gee, that's a pretty room aspect.
Sure. And I think that, as you said, just always keeping your eyes open. I think that's important because it helps sharpen your eye, because Absolutely. you can sort of discover what you love and what you don't love. No different in a museum. I mean, you shouldn't have to love every painting that you walk by. You're attracted to landscapes, or you're attracted to portraits, or both, and don't like contemporary art. Whatever the situation may be, I think you have to keep your mind also, and your eyes open to everything to sharpen that skill.
And I totally agree with you, Krissa. And the bottom line is, we don't even really know what we know in our knowledge set until we've learned it. Until you look back and say, gee, I didn't know that. I didn't know that 6 months ago. And it's to me, the most important thing is to always be pushing yourself from a learning perspective. I always feel like you're growing and learning and adding to your skills and your knowledge base.
Okay, great. Let's go back to your advertising career. And you said, that we've already established the fact that so many designers have had a career elsewhere, and that they can take those skills and apply them. Can you talk about maybe a few or a couple of key elements that you took from career one and transferred it over to your
Absolutely. And I think designer? It doesn't matter what your previous career was. There are so many applicable things, I'm sure, in just about almost any job that you can apply to your role as a designer. So for me in advertising, what I took very specifically was the importance of market research. And you'd say, gee, how does market research apply to design? The reason, what it applies is, what I learned in market research was to understand the customer, understand the consumer. That's what we need to do as a designer. And oftentimes, of course, we'll ask designers, our clients, to show us their Pinterest boards or show us tears from magazines and what they like and don't like. But you've got to also be able to go beyond that and sort of read between the lines and figure out really what it is that they're looking for. Because they may tell you they want this, but really what they want is something different. So it's understanding the consumer, understanding your client. So that would be one of the key things. The second thing I'd say is that I learned that the importance of developing a positioning. As a designer, it's important to remember that we are a product. As a designer, we are selling ourselves. And so you have to have a positioning of what you're going to stand for. What I learned very importantly in advertising is that you cannot be all things to all people. As a product, you have to deliver on a specific set of consumer wants. So you can't be the designer that does this and this and this. So figure out what it is that you're going to stand for, and then continue to focus that in terms of your communication. So then I would say, there's so many things I learned in advertising. The next I'd say is, from a business perspective, that the most important aspect of any relationship is trust. And trust, to me, as a designer, comes through in three ways. It's developing trust with your client, means transparency, how you bill, how you run your business, that they can understand and trust you financially. It has to do with the quality of the goods that you're providing them, that your goods and services are of a very high quality, so they're not disappointed there. And finally, so we've discussed financial, we've discussed the product, but we've also discussed, the final would be timing. Is that things come up all the time and you can't deliver, but it's important to always be communicating to clients what the timing situation is, because those are the three touch points that I have found that can break down trust in a relationship with a client: is the financial, the quality, and the timing. So I would say those are important things. I've got a couple more I just wanted to focus on, because I think I really did learn a lot in corporate life that is applicable. The next is the importance of mentorship. When you work in a big company, you have the opportunity to develop a mentor, someone who's more senior than you that can teach you. We in the design world don't have that natural structure to do that. Most designers are working independently. They're not, they don't really have someone they can go to and say, how would you handle this? And from a role model perspective. So I urge people to find a mentor. If there's someone you admire, you're just starting out, even if you're not starting out, find someone who's more established, who you can reach out to and or get that kind of insight from. I've had that from a couple designers when I was starting out. I continue to sort of go to people, and people I really very much try to serve as a mentor. Genevieve, who started Circophiles, worked for me for a number of years, and I am very proud to say that I feel like I am a mentor to her, and that's one of the reasons that I am so proud of what she's done with Circophiles. So it's important to have that mentorship, either as a mentor or and giving back, or as a young designer. And the two more points. One is getting support from colleagues. Again, we tend to work in our little towers of design, and we don't integrate with enough designers. When I go around the country giving talks, I'll always ask designers, well, how collaborative is your market? And in so many markets, designers say, oh, we don't really talk to other designers. That is a problem. We are all in the same business. We are not competitors, and we should be using each other to help each other. So, establish a support group in your market where you can talk about things, or if you don't feel comfortable in your market, through other things, and Circophiles will allow you to do that. It's got sort of this sort of ability to have chat rooms where you can talk to different designers and ask them for help. So that's important. And I think the final thing that I learned is, and again, because I was in marketing and advertising, is the importance of promotion, the importance of promoting your brand. You can be the best designer in the world, but if no one knows about you, you're not going to go anywhere. So you've got to do the promotion as well. So a lot of different things that I just shared, but I think they're all really important.
Well, and I'm going to go hit some of these. I've been writing down as you've been listing your points.
I've been rambling on.
Yeah, because you're sort of a mentor to me too. But first of all, let's tackle that. I think a mentorship, and it's always fun when you have somebody underneath you who you feel like you've got this teeny tiny part of their success when they sort of spread their own wings and go out. I think that's always very rewarding to me, not only what I do in my own career, but those who I've, trained and helped, and likewise for people who have helped me. But is it fair to say, would you agree with the fact that I think if you have the benefit of working for a big corporate situation first, or any business that does have sort of that natural structure system, take as much as you can, because I feel like if you have those fundamental business, business components that all sort of compound to reach that success level, I think those can apply to anything.
Absolutely.
Whether you're a designer or you're selling peanuts and Cracker Jacks, like I feel like those, have great organization skills and set up a system for your business. I think all of those things sort of contribute to the greatness and success of any business. And everything that you've listed here, it's so true. Again, regardless of the industry, I think it's important. So I think too many times people, they go into a field. We'll say they go into education. And then they're like, but my degree's in education. I can't jump over here and be a designer. And it's like, but you can, if that's what you really want to do.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, I think that, as I say, almost any career you do will have applicable
learning
and information that you can apply. And we've actually made a point of hiring people who have had different careers. We've actually had a brain surgeon. We've had a talent agent. We've had someone from Goldman Sachs. We've had investment bankers. We've had everything who've come in and have that other experience, because I find it makes them that much better as a designer, because they have all those other skill sets.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the support from colleagues and maybe give an example of what somebody could do in their own market to reach out to this network? Because the one great thing, and I've seen this just in the 2 decades now that I've been in this industry, watching designers really sort of open up and share their secrets. Everything isn't so hush hush and keep your information close to here anymore. It's people are very willing willing to share is, I mean, I think we've seen this during this quarantine period where some of the leaders in the industry, yourself included, have really opened up. And so could you maybe elaborate on that one? Because I think that can be helpful and people are scared sometimes to
Yes.
share.
I think so. And I think that, the biggest thing that people in our industry, the thing that no one wants to talk about is how you charge. And so that's something that one of my best friends, Vincent Wolf, and I, a great designer, we did a whole series of webinars on basically how we charge, how we work, et cetera, and sort of opening up and we literally said, here's our hourly fees, and we do charge for this, we don't charge for that. But that's the kind of thing that I really do feel that you can create in your own market, or as I say, just call 3 other designers and say, we want to start having a monthly club, or every 6 weeks we're going to get on Zoom and we're just going to talk about issues, and we'll talk about how we deal with different things. You can do it as formal as that, or you can just pick up the phone and call another designer and say, hey, I'm facing this question, this issue. How would you charge for this? Or how do you handle this? Or, et cetera. I think that we're all afraid. We're afraid to, we think of everyone again as competition. We've got to think of all of each other, all the colleagues in our industry as there to help each other, because we as an industry will rise if we all help each other.
That's so true. That's so true. Okay. So we've sort of talked about people who maybe didn't go to school with a formal design education. They went into something else. Let's talk about credentials, because I feel like in design, in today's landscape where YouTube can teach you how to do anything, we are all sort of conditioned to think that we can do it all. If you need to do some minor plumbing, there's a video for that. If you want to refresh a room, there's a video for that. If you want to do a little knee surgery, there's a video for that. You can do anything. But in all seriousness, it's difficult because there are some, official, you have ASID, for instance, and some people have those credentials and then other people do not. And in my mind, with something, in an industry that's very visual and artistic, it's about that sort of falling in love with said designer's look. It's like, I love their look, or their look's really not for me, and so I'm going to hire them or not. So can you talk about, having, again, that you talked a little bit about this, but having that commitment to go deep and learn all of the components to be a designer, because a lot of people out there consider themselves a designer, a stylist, an editor, because they wrote one blog post, or because they designed one room, or because they styled a photo shoot. And it's so much more than that. So I want you to go deep and give us an
example. Well, I totally agree with you. And I think that is so true. One of the things that is that ASID, that the American Institute of Architecture does, is you are required to take courses throughout the year to get these credits so that you continue to grow and evolve. And I think that whether you're a member of those organizations or not, it's incumbent upon you to do that, to continue to push yourself and grow. To me, I would say it's the single most important thing to me is to feel that I am growing and evolving and learning. So you've got to continue to force yourself to do that. Right now, for example, I'm reading 2 books, one on the architect Henri Samuel, who was a big architect in France in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And I'm also reading a book called The Architecture of Happiness, which is a book about how architecture actually can foster happiness. So again, it's almost like you're sort of like that extra credit that when you're in school, you got to keep doing it all your life. You can't just sit and say, well, I'm doing it in my 9-to-5 job as a designer. You got to keep pushing yourself all the time. So it's taking courses. The Institute for Classical Art and Architecture has a series of lectures. You can get on them right now with Zoom calls. This summer alone, I've done one with the Institute of Classical Art and Architecture. Or I think I've got it backwards, but on the houses of the Hamptons and on the history of decoration of ornamentation in architecture. So it's again, you've got to keep pushing, and it doesn't matter what age, how far along you are, you've got to continue to improve your credentials. And I think that is through knowledge.
Well, I think you always want to stay fresh and relevant too. And the
Absolutely.
only way to do that is keep exposing yourselves to more. On that note, let's talk about travel. You are, I don't know how many countries you've been to, but a lot. I once remember you telling me that you had to get a new passport because they require you to have so many blank pages for
Right.
certain countries.
Right.
And yours was all done. So you
Exactly.
even though it wasn't expired, you had to go get a new
Yeah, it
one.
was 3 years old, I think, and it was
Oh
already
my
full.
goodness. Oh my goodness. So look, personally, I think, I mean, I'm so appreciative to my parents for my formal education, but I think there's no better education than travel as far as understanding cultures, understanding the world, being exposed to art and architecture. I've been blessed to have that experience. You've traveled way more than I have even, but travel's also very expensive. And I think so much of design is rooted in travel that isn't necessarily in this
Absolutely.
country. And if you can't, if you are an aspiring designer and you can't hop on a plane to Florence, you just can't afford that, or to go to Paris. What are ways that you can sort of get that as best you can without actually being in some place?
Well, I actually think that travel can be wasted on people if they don't do the homework first for where they're going. So, you know, you can go to Florence and you can see these buildings, but unless you've actually have some sense of what it is you're looking at, it's going to be wasted on you. So right now, I really feel that you can get that now with the internet. You can experience 80% of what you would get if you were there yourself. I think it's a question of understanding the history of a place, understanding the context of that place and of the things that you're going to look at. So I feel like right now with COVID, we can still get so much of that learning. And I would say the key thing is to realize that pictures and Instagram alone, Pinterest, pictures, Instagram, it's not going to do it. That may spur your interest in something and may say, oh, that's pretty. But unless you dig deeper, unless you go in and understand it and research it and figure out, gee, why is that room the way it is? You really, that travel, if you'd seen it in person, would still be wasted on you. So it's a question of digging deeper and learning and understanding context and history. So Instagram, again, I love it. It's wonderful to provide some jumping off point, but you've got to dig deeper. And I think you don't have to travel there to get deeper.
Right. And I think when people do take trips, to your point, if you haven't done the homework first, it's merely checking off, you know, it's merely checking off boxes.
I will tell you, I've been
Tower check, Notre Dame check.
Yes,
that's all it becomes.
I have been places. I remember I once went when I was in advertising. I went to Beijing for my first time to China. I was there for 8 hours, and I could have been anywhere. It was like totally wasted on me because I wasn't there long enough, and I hadn't done even the homework about where I was going. So it's really important that you really do the homework first, so you understand what you're going to be looking at and what you should be looking for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's so important. And I think regardless of where you're traveling in the world, and it doesn't even have to be a different country.
Oh no, absolutely.
Pay attention to the architecture
in your own city. I mean, we are all, I'm sure, guilty of not really understanding our own city, the beauty in our own city, the history in our own cities or towns. You got to dig deep. You cannot live on the surface.
Right. Well, for so many people, they don't really get to know their own city until somebody comes to visit them.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Still, nobody will come visit me in Des Moines. I don't get it, but well.
I will come because I love the Midwest. So.
Okay. So one of the points that you talked about from applying from one career to the next was positioning. And from the very get-go, you positioned yourself in sort of the upscale arena. And that comes with bigger budgets from clients to allow you to execute your vision, get published, things of that nature. Talk about the advice you would give to designers who are listening who want to land those clients, or just clients in a variety of income brackets, what can designers do at a small level if they don't have the client with the grandiose budget? And the reason I wanted to address this question with you is because at Traditional Home, for instance, we have a program called 10 Designers to Watch For. In fact, it's in our current issue that just went on sale last week. And when we're perusing through all of these designer submissions that are given to us, mostly by younger designers, a lot of times it's like, oh, we can see the potential there, and they're so ripe and ready, but maybe they haven't had the client with the big budget. Can you talk a little bit about, if you're a new designer or a fairly new designer, what can you do to sort of show the breadth of your capability if you don't have that big project yet?
Okay, so let me just first, I want to say that yes, the majority of our projects are, big projects, well over 10,000 square feet, et cetera, but we don't determine whether we're going to take a project based on its size at all. We really look at both the creative possibility and the client itself. And so right now, we literally this week have taken on a 1,200 square foot house because the space is really great and the client is a doll. So it's like, why not do it? It's like, you've got to have the sense that, gee, this is going to be a fun project. I can do something new with it, and I think the client's going to be fun to work with. So, because frankly, the biggest project with a difficult client, you're not going to be happy doing it. So you've got to have the mix of both. So I think that one of the key things in terms of getting bigger clients, getting clients in general, I'd say, is you got to be willing to put yourself out there. People have to see what you can do, and I think show houses are a great opportunity to do that. We got a project a couple of years ago from a show house, from a client that might not have even known us otherwise. And what a show house does is it lets you do something. It shows what you could do when you don't have someone telling you what to do, when you could just do what you think is the right thing. And if you do it strategically with companies that want to promote their products, it doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg. And it's a great way to get visibility. So, and I just think it lets you stretch yourself creatively. I think that we all need to continually to stretch ourselves creatively. And a show house, for example, is a great way to do that.
Okay. Can you, and I'm throwing this in, this wasn't on your notes. It's
okay.
On surprise.
Okay.
Also, I wanted to bring up something that you love and that you do so beautifully, and that is entertain. And I think, again, having a tablescape is a great opportunity for a designer to sort of show, granted, it's plates and dishes, crystal, and maybe it's not all of the categories you would want to use, but I still think it's a moment where you can show your creativity. Can you talk a little bit about your love for entertaining?
I do. I love entertaining. It's interesting. I've actually designed 2 China collections for Royal Limoges, which is the oldest porcelain company in France. And I'm working on a new one with them right now. But I'm ashamed to say China is one of my weaknesses. I think I have maybe 22 sets of China between my different homes. I love China, but I think that creating a beautiful home, a beautiful place to entertain, and frankly, I eat at my dining table every night. Kathleen and I sit at the table at this table, and we have we use the baccarat china and crystal and different china. Every day should feel special. Every day should feel like you're taking care of yourself. And so it's sort of, I'm a big believer in using the good stuff every day, because, someone once said to me, do you use your good stuff every day? And I said, every day is all we have. That's really what we have.
That's so true. That's so lovely.
And it's really true. Yep. So it's like, use your good things today.
And I can confirm that Diet Coke tastes way better out of baccarat.
It sure does.
Well, I think those are great tips. And I think for young designers or people who are watching out there, just to know that create your own canvas, even if it's at a smaller scale, to show what you can do and be
Yes,
inventive. And I think people understand if you're just starting off. They
yes,
understand that you may not have the clients, but just to use any canvas that you can get your hands on to show what you can do.
absolutely.
Quarantine life, it has turned our worlds upside down. As we talk about what you didn't know as a designer, because we're going to sort of talk about that now, how will you shift your business as we move forward? So I'd first like you to talk about what you didn't know when you started off. And then are there areas of design that you're excited to tackle on now that may look a little different than everything you've known since you did launch your business?
Okay. Well, I would say, interestingly enough, what I actually got COVID has done is it's reinforced something that I believed in a long, long time, and it's gotten reinforced because clients have called me. Let me tell you what it is. It's that I have been a big believer in that no one should have a room that they don't use. Like having a living room that's the formal living room that you only go in when company comes over or at holidays, or a dining room that you don't use and that you rarely use. I've always believed you've got to figure out what's going to get you to use every room all the time. And so that meant that a lot of the rooms that we tend to create are rooms that feel multi-purpose. So we took a living room and we actually we covered the walls and lined the walls with refrigerated wine coolers, beautiful mahogany coolers, but it was a wine cellar living room and they used it regularly. I have a desk in my living room because I go home after work, and I will go into that living room because there's a desk there and I can do work there. So it's something different. So I've had a dining room that was a library dining room. So my clients have come back to me and called and said, during COVID, you always said to us, don't have rooms that you're not going to use. And, you designed them so that they would have multi-uses, and we're using them that way now. We really are, more than ever, because, we are at home all the time, and, this person has to have a Zoom call in this room and this one in the other room. And I think that what I've learned is the importance of designing spaces to work in multiple ways, so that they are not just this dedicated room that you're not going to use except for when company comes. So I think that's the biggest affirmation that I've gotten through COVID is that aspect of multi-purpose rooms.
Okay, so that's something that was that a surprise to you when you first started, that people didn't use certain rooms?
Oh, absolutely. It's like how many people you can almost look at someone's living room and say, no one uses that room. That looks dead. It looks like a museum piece. Everything's so perfect and in place. And that to me is like the kiss of death with a room. It's like, whether you've got a 1-room studio or a 30-room mansion, you should be figuring out how to use every room every day.
Okay.
If not every day, a lot. So.
And what do you say, but on the topic of these really grand, enormously sized homes that some people have, it's not possible to use every room in the house every single day, or a lot. What is there a point when houses become too big? Because there is some, I don't want to quote anything because I don't have exact numbers in front of me, but there is a little bit of soft research right now that indicates among new builds from homeowners associations that they are becoming a little smaller so can you maybe talk about when does a house become too big?
Well, I'm probably not the one to talk. I just, my last chateau was 45,000 square feet, and that's too big for anyone. But I loved it, and I would just sort of not go to certain floors. So I'm not one who believes that any space is too big, because I love houses, I love rooms, I love all of those. But I think it's important to figure out. I think that what I realized, like in my last chateau, is that you don't need 16 guest bedrooms because you're never going to use them. It's like use rooms. When you're creating a house, figure out the rooms that you're going to use, and that's all you need. So you do need a library and a living room and a TV room, but you don't need X, Y, and Z in addition to that. So I think it's just important to really always be conscious of, if you've got a space, if you're moving into a house, figure out what's going to get you to use that space. And if it becomes a craft room, whatever it is, but have have a room, have a reason to be used.
Okay. Did you know when you first started this career that you would have such a personal attachment to redoing houses for yourself? Because I'm lucky enough to say that I've been, I was able to go to your last chateau, and it was like the two greatest nights of my life. I felt like such a princess, and I still look back at those pictures in my room that you had picked out for me, and it was such a great experience, and I loved every second of it. But that's a commitment that not, in fact, you're the only designer, let's face it,
who's that crazy?
Who buys chateaus in France and then redoes them and then buys another. But talk a little bit about that, because not every designer, you look, they may do this 9 to 5, right? And they may come home and say, I don't want to do that at all. I am not a designer, I'm an editor, and I get a little overwhelmed sometime by all the design stuff in my world. And people will say to me, you must just love doing that all day. And it's like, you know what? I just want my TV and a bowl of Cheerios some night. So tell me, did you know that you would personally not only want to do this 9 to 5, but in your leisure time too, buy these grand locations and redo them often?
I don't think I knew it growing up per se. But I do know that I've lived in lots of houses and I've moved a lot. I actually love the process. I really love the process of recreating spaces, whether it's for me or for other clients. It's figuring out what it is about that space that's going to make it work, what's going to bring it to life. To me, it's I don't think I enjoy anything more than that, is that really that figuring out the space. And how it's going to work. More importantly, even than whether it's pretty or not pretty or whatever, it's the functionality of it. Figuring out the functionality of spaces is what I think is the most interesting.
So there's not really a situation where you would buy a house turnkey, because you're gonna get.
Oh, I would never, ever. It's like, what fun would that be?
What fun would that be? Okay.
No, a fixer-upper is my dream.
Okay. Back to something that has just inundated all of our lives for the past however many years, social media.
Oh, yeah.
And you talked about this a little bit already, but again, I would love for you to elaborate, because I heard you say recently that social media doesn't really inspire you. And it's, you kind of touched on it already, but it's a place to see pretty pictures, but it doesn't tell you anything about imagery. And so many people go to Instagram for inspiration. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think so many people can agree, this is my opinion, but I think a lot of people would agree with me. The bad part of Instagram, and especially in this industry, is everything looks pretty perfect all the time. And we all know that life is not perfect. So, along those lines, can you tell us why you think Instagram is sort of just what it is, and that is a
okay. Well, I would say that for young designers today, I would say it is easier than it ever was to create and become successful as a designer, become known and become successful as a designer. I think the old media model was actually much more difficult for designers to become established, because you had to get published in a magazine, and there aren't that many magazines. It was a longer, lower build. Today, social media makes it possible for you to get out to an audience of both clients as well as other people in the design world in a much faster, easier way than you ever had. And so I think that increasingly, because of also the decrease of the impact of traditional media, social media becomes even more important. So you can't ignore it. Whether you like it or don't like it, you have to use it. But the issue is to use it wisely. Use it to develop your brand. So there are a number of designers who are very successful today, who have built their design business off of social media, whether it's as a blogger or from Instagram, and they've done a great job. So you use them as a model for how you're going to build your business if you're just starting out. What I do is I'm very careful to manage what we communicate. I have two Instagram sites. One is my personal one is my company one. And they're both very consciously focused on building the brand, on
Would you
communicating.
elaborate on them further and sort of give us specifics of
Sure.
what each channel entails?
So my company one will talk about, gee, I'm doing this, I've won this award, or I'm in this magazine, or it's more news and factual driven.
Okay.
And it's that. The personal one focuses on just what I'm feeling. It shows where I'm traveling, or what I'm seeing, or an experience. I focus on the restoration of my new chateau, and I'll share both the good and the bad. And I will tell you that, to your issue about only showing the pretty, when I also say, gee, here's what got screwed up, and here's the scratched windows panes that the painter caused, and it's going to cost $140,000 to fix, or whatever it is, people actually they actually respond to that, and they actually love that. So don't be afraid to show the negatives and the sad, the problems as well, because that's what makes you real. That's what makes you approachable and makes you human, because we've all got those problems. So don't always just show the good pictures and the beautiful things, but also show the problems. But I think it's important, if you want to show the picture of you wearing a bikini, maybe have a totally different Instagram.
Yeah,
I sure don't. Or I don't even wear a Speedo. But I mean, but if you're going to do one, maybe even have a whole different Instagram account that doesn't even have your name on it, or it doesn't have your name that people usually could get, because you've got to remember that if your company has your name, you are the brand, and you have to represent the brand at all times.
Right. Absolutely. I love that you say how important it is to show the bad stuff too. So when I was an intern at Traditional Home many, many years ago, it was my job, back when magazines had letters columns, when people wrote letters.
Yes, God forbid, yes.
A pen and a piece of paper, that thing. We had a question of the month, and they could win a free book or whatever thing we had around. We had a little contest for it. And if I asked a positive question, or a question in the positive, the responses were sort of like, yeah. But if I asked them something like, tell us your biggest design mistake. Oh my gosh, I got these pieces, and they were funny. They were so entertaining and funny.
Yes.
So it's funny how we're, as humans, conditioned to kind of want to go there, because it gives us that, it gives a little bit of levity, depending how much money you dropped. It just gives us makes us human.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes.
We can all relate to the problems.
We can all relate to the problems. We all have them. So let's go to product knowledge now, because I'm wondering if when you started, you knew about the breadth of everything that entailed for your clients, from trade shows to fabric reps dropping off the latest patterns, the newest SKUs. Tell us about everything that's available, maybe what you didn't know about how much time and energy that part of the business took, and maybe some platforms and assets that are available now that you're excited about to use.
Well, I think the bottom line is that as a designer, and I think this is true more than ever before, as a designer, it's our job to know about more product than any of our clients ever can. Because clients they think they know everything they can find a lot on the internet. So it is essential that you always know more than they do, that you know more resources, that you can say, oh yes, well that's nice, but you should see this, this, and this, because it's so much nicer. And that's how they will start to trust you and realize that you can give them something they cannot get on their own. So to me, it's that aspect of knowing more than your clients. And I think that trade fairs give you that. I've been a big believer. I've gone to trade shows all around the world. I've gone to Maison, both fall and winter every year, I think for like 12 years, 13 years. I just think it's important to always know what's available. it's important that you've touched and felt and sat in that chair rather than just seeing the picture. So many designers sort of say, well, it looks good on the internet. It looks good on my screen. Well, it's like, you got to know it. You got to see it. That's one of the things that our clients expect. They expect that we know more, that we know more than just what we've seen on the screen. So I think that's important. And the other thing it's important is to find trades and skill sets, craftsmen that you could not find otherwise. So it's one of the reasons that I believe so much in what Circophiles is doing, is that they are bringing together all these different tradesmen and resources of people that you would never know otherwise. They're all around the world, and they're bringing it all together so that you can actually access all these different trades, these different artisans all around the world. So it's the things that are beyond what you'd find in your local design center. You know, it's like, it's a person who does something that's so specialized and so unique that you couldn't find it on your own. And I think that's what's so important, is that we continue to, I talked earlier about the importance of staying abreast in your head in terms of your knowledge set. This is a part of your knowledge set, is that sense of all the different opportunities and products that are available out there.
And would you agree, for designers who may be watching, who are maybe just starting out or haven't built their business yet? Because I think, look, a lot of your clients, you are specifying product that's maybe perhaps trade only, or you're shopping for them at the Paris flea market, or you're truly finding one of a kind pieces. For designers who may be starting out, they may be specifying from catalogs, websites where their clients can just order it themselves. A designer said to me once in an interview last year, it's been relatively recent, she said to me, you know, that her job is to offer her clients something that they couldn't do on their own. So I think for a younger client or somebody who's just starting, you know, if they order that table from Ballard Designs because that's what their client can afford, to your point, let's change it up a little bit. Let's call in a craftsman, call in a painter, because maybe it's a great form, but not the right color, and it only comes in 3 finishes. So change it up and spread your wings there.
Yes, we do that so much. We will just do customizing things. I mean, it's something that it's, you know, what, like the little tricks I do is to me, you can buy a relatively inexpensive lamp, but you put a great lampshade on it that's custom, and all of a sudden it looks like $1 million. So it's those little, and I think increasingly as customization becomes more and more a part of even mass marketers, where you can have it in this finish and this color and this whatever, we as designers are going to have to be able to stay ahead of them in terms of customization. That is really the future for our business, is giving the clients things that they could not get on their own.
Yes. Okay, now we're going to talk about some of those ancillary parts of the business, because you've gone in, you're designing beautiful spaces, gorgeous interiors for all of your clients, but there's that other stuff. There are the show houses, the licensing deals, the books. Tell us what have been the biggest surprises when it comes to those sorts of components that a lot of designers really dream about, because, you know, I mean, who doesn't want a book that's their monograph? So talk about those things, and specifically what have been surprises to you too? As you
so that's a great question. I think that it is very easy to forget. All those things look wonderful and sexy. They're shiny, flashy, like toys. But the bottom line is, never forget what your core business is. And your core business is interior design. And so those other things are nice. They're great, but only as much as they will actually support your core business. And I will tell you, I've got some incredible licensed collections. I love doing licensed collections, because for me personally, it brings together my background of consumer market, understanding the consumer market, and all that, and then marrying that into a product that is beautiful from a design perspective. So that's why I love licensing. It's not because you're going to make money on it. You actually will make very little money on a license.
And I don't think a lot of people know that.
They think you're going to make a lot of money. You're not. You're not. So, you know, you're going to make maybe make $10,000 on a collection a year. So it's not like you're going to make lots of money. You could take that same time and spend it on clients, and you will make more money. So again, licensing is great, but it's not really going to help your core business. And I say I do it because I love that the process of it, but not from a financial perspective. Books. Again, people think that, oh, gee, a book is going to make my business, and I'm going to make lots of money on it. A book costs you money. Even if a publisher is giving you some contributing to some of the costs, it still costs you because you have to provide all the photography, you have to provide the writer, etc. And so a book will cost you money, and then you have to go out and promote it. So a book is definitely not a moneymaker. You're going to lose money on a book. Why do it? Well, yes, it does gives you some credibility. It's nice to be able to say, this is a book of my work, but it's a flashy, I put it in that flashy toy sort of thing. It's not going to directly contribute to your bottom line in a positive way in terms of building your business. So again, those are two things that every designer thinks, oh, I need to have all those. You don't. You can be just as successful without them. And there are many, 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 probably many more successful designers who don't have either of those than there are that do. So to me, they're nice to have, but they're certainly not necessary. A show house, on the other hand, I think is something that is a good investment. But I think it's particularly, I would really urge that it have some opportunity for media coverage. And because if it's just a local show house where there's not going to be any coverage of it, even on Instagram, you're not going to get enough bang for your buck because there are not enough people that are going to come through that show house. So always make sure that there is some media, and it can be social media coverage that's going to come as a result of that show house. Because I do think that there's one designer I can think of particularly who her career was made because of a room that she did in a show house, and no one had heard of her. All of a sudden, she was on everyone's Instagram, and she was on everyone's lips. She's now, you know, a big designer, and it was just strictly from doing a relatively minor area in a show house. So I do think that show houses are very valuable opportunities.
Somebody's got to do that powder room, right? That
Yes.
little powder room.
It's a jewel box that everyone talks about.
Sure. Yep. And sometimes those are the ones that everybody talks about more than anything.
Yep.
So no business life comes without failures. And I think sometimes designers who aren't as well known, who are just starting out and aspire to be you, and the people who are sort of at your level, they think that everything comes super easy, that the book deal's easy, and landing the big client is easy, and getting published is easy. Can you tell us about, you know, an honest, candid time maybe when you had a failure or you had something that didn't go your way? And for an editor, we're done in like 10 minutes, by the way. We can't take all day for that one. But, you know, as an editor, I think, you know, people say to me all the time, oh, you naturally publish, and they'll list off that, you know, 5 or 6 designers, yourself included, you know, who they think we take every project from. And it's like, well, not every project's right. Because like in our case, as you know, from working with traditional home, we have to have homeowner involvement. And sometimes your homeowners aren't involved. So can you tell us about something that sort of didn't go your way that everybody should know, that he's just like me?
I will tell you, we worked on a project that I thought it was going to be a career changing project.
Okay.
It was amazing. It's over the top, spectacular. Genevieve from Circa Files knows it very well. We had a real difficulty getting it published. And it was one magazine after another turned it down. I thought it would have been the easiest one because it was so spectacular and everything. It was too much for most magazines to even take in. So there are always surprises, and there are always things that go wrong. And I think that you know, we just sort of have to. It's part of our business. My key learning is whenever things go wrong, I sit everyone down in the office and I say, okay, what are our lessons learned from this? Because I really believe that it's essential that you make lemonade out of every lemon that you're given and figure out what's the gift? What are you going to learn from this? What are you going to take forward that will be, that will allow you to not make that mistake again?
Great, great. Um, what about clients maybe that you had to turn down? Or here's another question that I guess I've never asked you. I've just assumed, and maybe I'm assuming wrong. Do you usually get interviewed for projects? Because you're also designing, for people who are watching who don't know, you're designing for like royalty in certain cases. So are they interviewing you, or do most of your clients come to you and say, we want Timothy Corrigan, we've seen your work, we're just, or are you ever competing against other design talents?
Oh, I'm sure we are. I think that this relationship, the relationship between a designer and a client, is like any other relationship. It's about finding the good fit, the good marriage. So they may think, gee, we give the look that they want, but if they don't like me, they don't feel like we're going to be a good fit, then it's not going to be successful.
Not meant to be.
One of the things that I find interesting is how so many people, even the wealthiest people, have a fear of designers, interior designers. They don't understand what we do, or they think that they don't understand our business. I'll give you an example. We were actually approached a couple of years ago by a very well-known billionaire who was like timid about saying, well, we're just checking to see if maybe you'd be interested in working with us. And I was like, are you kidding? Why would I not want to? It's like, but they had this feeling that, oh, gee, an interior designer, they hadn't really worked with one before, and they weren't sure, like, we were just for fancy people. And I was like, well, you count as one of those fancy people. But a lot of people are afraid of that. They're afraid of design, of interior designers, and I think that it's important that we show that we actually offer we offer them things that are beyond just procurement of goods. That we actually have a knowledge base that is going to be helpful to them. That's going to save them money in the long run. Not just because we buy things at a better price, but because we have knowledge, so that we're not going to make the mistakes that they might have made on their own. Okay. And that's true whether it's a young individual who's got $50,000 to spend, or they've got $2 million to spend. We have value that we offer them.
Okay. Well, first of all, because we're kind of like segueing into the last question that we have, but first I'm going to interrupt and ask you, don't you think that clients in general, I don't feel like this is the 80s where people want to be ostentatious just for the sake of having diamonds dripping, like, right. Crystal Carrington. They want a little bit of a deeper knowledge. And it goes back to the whole, makers movement that we're seeing now, where people want a story behind the thing that they're buying. They don't just want the thing, they want to know about the thing. So would you agree that, again, it goes back to that level of education that you're providing for your clients. So when they say, I just spent $250,000 on this antique from Paris, and people, there's some sticker shock there, that they can at least be able to give a justification for it beyond it fit the space.
But you know what? You're exactly right. And what that all comes down to is education and knowledge. And it is just as much a part of our job is to educate our clients to the why something costs what it does. When you show a client that this tassel trim from Samuel Sons, each tassel was hand tied and was all done, all of a sudden that $25 a yard seems like a bargain. Sure. And it's true of everything. You show them a beautiful Fromental wallpaper that's been hand painted, et cetera. You're saying, this is why it costs what it does. So it's important that we explain all that process. There was something in Business of Home 2 weeks ago, which was about why does a yard of fabric cost what it does? That's the kind of knowledge that we need to be sharing with our clients, because it's important that they understand why things are special, why they are unique, and why they cost what they do, so that we do that with all of our clients. Interesting. We had a client who we bought this wonderful 18th century mirror, and as you know, in the 18th century, they couldn't make big panels of mirror, so they would often divide them into two. And this beautiful mirror came, and the client said, "I love it, but can we just change that glass out so he has one piece?" And I said, "No, that's what you paid so much money for, was those two pieces." And I had to explain that to her, as why it was that way. And now she has that appreciation. So I think it's really important that we explain everything to our clients, because that's how it adds value to what we are doing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the value isn't only in the thing that you're seeing, the piece that you're seeing, it's in the knowledge as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they'll take greater pride in what they have if they understand it.
And be a little more vested in the overall
absolutely
too, to take care of things and know that it's not just a placeholder.
Yes.
So is there anything else, because we talked about maybe things that were surprises to you, what you brought from your former career, but anything else, flipping this topic on upside down, that you wish that the client knew? Because I think there is so much intimidation when people think about hiring an architect or a designer. It's a very scary thing. People do assume it's something for fancy people, quote unquote. Is there anything else that, I think cost is a big thing. People don't understand what design components cost, but anything else that you would like to share as we wrap up, what you wish the clients knew? Because that's important for a new designer to not get frustrated when their clients sort of want their proposals.
And to me, again, this is a personal thing with me, but I really believe that it is not about my sense or my ego about what that job is, what the project looks like. It really is going to be successful if they love it, if they're happy with it. And so to me, it's essential that that I give them the best version of what they love and what they want. And sometimes it's not always something that I would say, "Oh, this is the most beautiful room I've ever created." But it's the most beautiful room that could ever be created for that person, for that client, because it's what they want. And I think it's so important to always separate your ego from design and really deliver the client the best version of what they want.
Okay, great. That's a great way. Now we do have some, to wrap up that part of this segment, we do have some questions that Genevieve has sent.
Great.
Thank you, Genevieve. The first one, what are some effective ways you have used to get clients, to secure those clients?
One way that I think that a lot of people don't, I didn't know for years, and I would say it was one of the things I wish I'd known earlier, architects and contractors and realtors. Those are the three. The best way, of course, is if current clients referring you to other current clients. That's without a doubt the best. But when you're developing a client base to start with, cultivate relationships with real estate agents, architects, and general contractors, because they are the three biggest sources for referrals. So I think that would be my biggest recommendation.
That's great advice. Let's see. I think this is asking, do you sign on specific projects for exposure specifically?
Absolutely. I've done projects where I think, it's not going to be the most creative project, but I know that this is a project that I can get published, or it's a influential person in a community who can help spread it. And so absolutely, you always, again, you've got to look at that you're running a business, and that you've got to do, and again, when you keep in mind that it's not your ego, you're giving that client the best version of what they want, then it allows you to take on a project that wouldn't necessarily be your desired creative design approach.
So, and I think you have to, no differently than vary your portfolio. You have to invest differently too. Like some are financial investments, some are educational investments.
Absolutely.
Some, as you said, are investments where you're in fact you're making money, but it's done for the purpose of exposure. So be diverse in those business assignments and assets as well. Oh, we have another. does, let's see, do you sign on projects during renovations? I think that's what this is asking. Like on the construction fence, does that work? I'm not quite sure what they're
Okay,
asking.
so I think I understand the question. Is the question is ideally you would get started with a job before the renovation has started, so you can actually have impact on that. But I've been brought into jobs where they were half designed architecturally, half built, and you know it's you know, and you have to live with some choices that you wouldn't necessarily want to live with if you'd been on earlier. But yes, I think we've all taken on projects that are sort of halfway done, and you have to make the best of that situation.
Do you have an example, we're getting juicy here, of a situation where you have had to come in and sort of save the day because they had already hired a designer? And I don't want you to name names or anything like that, but can you just sort of give us like a non-specific example of when you had to come in and they weren't happy? Because I think that's important for designers who are listening to know too, that as they're saying to client, as they're educating their clients, look, you have to have that solid relationship from the get-go with your designer. Otherwise, it is going to cost you more money.
Right.
So get it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it comes back to relationship, and we've taken over so many jobs. We were the second or third. We're working on one right now where we are the fifth designer. And you sort of go, okay, well, what's going on with this? And I think that the key thing on that is to develop that relationship, because the bottom line is, I'm sure every one of those designers before that were all excellent designers, but what they probably were not successful in doing was establishing that sense of trust between the client and them. Because when a client trusts you, you're going to get that job done. You're not going to be the sixth designer on it. So it's establishing that sense of relationship and trust. I'll tell you, one of the funniest ones was we were working on a project where I think it was like a 26 or 7,000 square foot house, and it had this incredible master suite, but the master bathrooms and dressing rooms were on another floor. So you had to go to the third floor, you had to walk up the stairs to get to them. And I was like, how is it possible that this architect couldn't find a way to get a bathroom closer to the bedroom than having to take up a flight of stairs? And the clients were fairly young. They were in their early 40s. And I said, well, I can tell you, as you get older, you're going to want to get up once or twice a night to go to the bathroom. And you're not going to want to walk upstairs to do that. So we were able to figure out how to at least get a powder room into adjacent space, so that in the middle of the night, at least they'd have that. So again, I think it's there are always things where if you get into a project halfway, you can still sort of save the day.
Okay, great. We have more. How do you deal with different cultures, especially different quarantine time? And I don't know if they're asking because you do have an international client base.
Well, we are right now, we are working in 4 different continents around the world right now, and we have during this, we have Zoom calls at 9 o'clock at night and at 5 in the morning, and it's just one of the things you sort of have to do, and it sort of becomes awkward times for almost everyone. They're often getting up in the middle of the night too to do it as well, but it's part of what is happening, and what I was actually think was realizing earlier is that Zoom and all this technology has been around for a while, but clients always wanted to see you in person. Now that they can't, they're actually adapting to these Zoom meetings, and a lot of them are finding it to be much more productive in terms of their time. And it's certainly, as designers, it's more productive for us because we do not have all that travel time that is, which was wasted time, which we could do that, and we're having very successful presentations all done on Zoom.
Well, quarantine life has certainly exposed us and made us know what is a want versus a need, and,
exactly.
and realizing that things that we thought were needs aren't really that. We can live without them. So we have answered all of the questions. So thank you so much. And I have to say, for those designers who may run into you in High Point someday, if we ever have High Point again, or any other shows, that they should by all means come up to you, because you are I don't like the word nice because I feel like it's meaningless. So I'm not going to use that word, but you are one of the most gracious, generous, gentlemanly
Oh, thank
individuals
you.
I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. And I treasure you and your talents and everything about you. And you're generous with your knowledge, you're generous with your time. And I can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you. I want to say also thank you, and I want to thank Circophiles for what they're
Yes.
doing. And it's such a pleasure to be here. And I've got to tell you what an honor it is for me to be in this industry. I feel like we're working in the best industry in the world. And I just want to say finally, I am there to support anyone. Anyone's got questions, help, anything, I'm always there because I really feel that we all need to be helping each other because that's how we will rise as an industry.
And this is the time to learn something new or introduce yourself and get a relationship with a new product and new technology. And so learn to use Circophiles because we are going to be reliant on new different kinds of resources as we move forward. And this is the perfect time to, while we have the time at home, to introduce yourself to something new. So thank
Great.
you, Tim. Thank you, Genevieve.
Thank
And
you.
health and happiness to everybody.
You
Thank
too.
you. Take
Bye.
care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.